I figured we got in.
Good evening. I call this meeting of the Cartersville City Council to order. If you will please stand for invocation and pledge.
Pray with me, please. Our dear gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight and we just give you thanks for the opportunity to come and do the business of the city. We thank you for the city, and we thank you for the staff and the management, the employees, and who make things happen, make the services happen here. And so we just give thanks for that tonight. And we ask that you would go before us as we make decisions for the city, that you would give us wisdom and guidance, and we'll give you the praise and glory for all that's done. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just direct the roll, please.
Carrie Hodge, Ward 1. Here. Jay Stepp, Ward 2.
Here.
Carrie Roth, Ward 3.
Here.
Calvin Cooley, Ward 4.
Here.
Gary Fox, Ward 5.
Here.
Taft Red, Ward 6.
Thank you, Julia. First order of business is the approval of our council meeting minutes from January 6th. And council, you've had an opportunity to look these over for a few days now as they were sent to us via email. Now would be the time to make any edits if there are any to be had. If there are none, a motion is in order.
I make a motion to accept the minutes as read.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Mr. Menino, if you'll get us started with a series of appointments tonight, I'll ask you to do the two that you're handling first, and then we'll, that way,
Okay,
trying to save your legs.
Thank you, Mayor. The first one, Patty Rogers is being recommended to serve on the Alcohol Control Board for the Ward 1 appointee. She'll be replacing Jennifer Smith. That term will expire June 3rd, 2024.
I would like, if you don't mind, Mayor, to give my appreciation to Jennifer for her service and previous board members that have served on my behalf. And I look forward to having Patty in that seat. She'll do a great job.
Thank you very much for those comments. Is there any other comments or discussion? And if not, a motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Planning Commission, please, Randy.
Yes, thank you again, Mayor. The terms of 4 Planning Commission members, their terms are expiring. They'd be Travis Popham, Ward 1, Greg Culverhouse, Ward 5, Lamar Penley, who was the mayor's appointment. And then the other vacancy was Lamar Pinson, who had to resign last year. That term is now expired, and we have an appointment recommended of Fritz Dent for Ward 3 on that one.
Any questions or discussion on those? And if not, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Dan, if you'll handle the other ones, please.
Yes, Mayor. The first one is the Second Joint Development Authority. Lamar Penley is currently serving on that board and requests to continue on if the council approves through December 31st, 2025.
Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Next item, Mayor, is the Convention and Visitor Bureau. You have Jeff Watkins and Tom Chanal's terms are expiring. They continue to wish to serve, and their terms would go through December 31st, 2023 if reappointed.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on these? If there's no discussion, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. AZ 2201, Mr. Menino.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. This is a proposed annexation and rezoning. The property has been properly posted and advertised. There appears to be no conflicts of interest, and it was reviewed based on the standards for exercise of zoning powers as explained in our zoning ordinance. With that, there is approximately 24.7 acre tract on the east side of the rail line on the back side of Atco subdivision. The property also has additional acreage, but it fronts on burnt hickory that is not part of this application, with it being a separate tract. The applicant is proposing approximately an 80-lot subdivision to the R7 zoning. R7 is what the adjacent Atco subdivision is currently zoned. Access to this development would be from existing streets. They would cross Litchfield at Wingfoot Trail and Goodyear Avenue. Again, it's bound on the west side by CSX Railroad. So getting across there, it could be done if it was developed from the Burnt Hickory side, but it would be extremely difficult with floodplain and railroad on the other side. With that, the individual departments that reviewed this for the city have reviewed it. No major comments came from them. Additionally, the Planning Commission held a public hearing. There was at least 3 or 4 people that spoke at the Planning Commission. There was some concern about lighting on Litchfield. There was some concern about traffic coming out of there, and some other things that were mentioned. And again, that was expressed to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission did recommend approval of this to City Council.
I do have a question for you, Randy. I'm sorry I didn't ask it in the work session. I know that we discussed in the work session the optional density bonus
Yes.
and the potential of that, some of that property becoming part of the city. The elevation of that proposed property that would go to recreation, is that in a floodplain or is that?
No.
Okay.
It's flat. It's the backside of the existing park there. If I could
It's on
walk
the
up.
top, it's on the top side of the rectangle.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And the Howlands are here representing the application, and they probably have the exact acreage of that property.
All right. Any other questions for Randy at this time? All right. Thank you, sir. I will open up a public hearing. Now, we've got 2 separate public hearings that take place. One is relative to the annexation, and one is relative to the zoning. So I'll open up the annexation portion of this
Mayor, zoning comes first.
zoning. That's what I meant to say. Steve, thank you.
It's all right.
I'll open up the zoning portion of this request in a public hearing. So now a public hearing for the zoning portion of AZ 2201, and ask anybody who wishes to speak for or against to do so at this time. And when you do, come on forward, Ms. Crawford. And when you do, if you will please give your name and your address for our clerk so that she can include that in the minutes.
Ms. Crawford, if I might suggest, if you would hold off on your comments for just a few moments. I think the applicant actually was trying to stand up to speak, and you might want to hear what they have to say, because it could adjust your comments.
Absolutely fine.
Okay.
I will yield.
I didn't know, it looked like you were standing up, so.
Either way is fine.
Yeah, well, why don't y'all,
We're good to go.
yeah,
If
okay.
you're running the meeting, who do you want to talk to?
I don't know, I don't care. I just saw them try to stand up.
They also might hear her comments and might want to adjust their comments to what her concerns
Well,
are.
they have closing remarks as well.
That's true.
I'm short. Actually, I had combined them, so it might take me just a minute to sort of separate them. And honestly, I did not wish to have any questions or answers right now, because I know I'm compressed to 10 minutes, and I do have a lot to say. I have a lot of questions to ask. But on
when you do have
the,
those questions, if you would address
Yeah.
them to us.
Yes.
Even if they're
Now,
developer
you
related,
say-
we can relay that.
sure.
Thank you.
You say first is zoning or
Yeah,
the
this is-
R7?
This is more for the zoning. So I
Okay.
think a lot of your concerns would fall into that portion, so.
Well, and yes, they do. One, being, I guess going back to the future land map and it being identified as a very different sized neighborhood. And 80 homes will bring significant traffic in. And we're already faced with failing streets, infrastructure, water problems, which I've outlined. And I've heard more just this week. I don't, the zoning map's the main thing. Do y'all not see that?
Go ahead.
It's very different. It's recommended as low, medium land use. And that is actually an R7 with high density and an optional bonus to add in language that allows those lots to be a minimum of 5,000 feet, or 500,000, sorry, I'm not looking at my notes. but
5,000 square feet.
Yeah, which in a regular R7 is a minimum of 700,000 square feet. So I see it as very problematic. And it ends up actually on back from Litchfield, affecting the whole neighborhood because there's only 2 entrances into Atco. One at Sugar Valley, and that is already congested, as identified last week, with the ballpark, community church, the depot, the clubhouse. We get a lot of traffic, and when there's ball games, they park everywhere, and sometimes illegally. I mean, you know, and it really congests that area. So those are, you know, some of the concerns. I can hold off on some of the other stuff, but we do have major concerns on the annexation as well, which involves the proposed land usage. We have a lot of questions on that. And I have canvassed the neighborhood somewhat, and I will continue to. I was actually somewhat put off that no public comments were included in this agenda. They were from the Hollins, but not from any of the citizens. We are taxpayers. I know there's a lot of rental property in there, but it's also a low-income area. And we have seniors, we have young folks, they may be renters, but we have a lot that own property. And they're actually really concerned about this. It will hurt the community. One of our major concerns is our roads can't handle this. They're narrow as a district, a historic district. They are not supposed to change the roads. And the roads in this new development are supposed to model after our roads. They do not. I'm especially concerned about traffic coming in, and when they start building, I think it will be a nightmare. Those roads can't handle heavy loads. They're not structured properly. We already have problems, and heavy trucks, equipment, and a building shortage might carry this out for a couple years. I think it's unfair to the Atco community. Anyway, I didn't state my name, or did I? And that where I live. I live on Litchfield Street. I have for almost 6 years. And I live at 25, which is sort of in the middle. We have existing problems with traffic. It's a one-way street. We have racers. We have people that go the wrong way. I was threatened to be run over, and I have a witness this summer because I asked someone to turn around and go the different way, and they actually cussed me out and gunned their car right up to my leg. So, I mean, there's just many other things I feel that should be looked after before this is pushed through. And I haven't canvassed the neighborhood. I only got notice of this, or the minutes, on the 5th. My mother died on the 2nd. At any rate, I just feel like, please don't push this through without proper attention. The community can't handle it. And I will say it feels like a lot like, what do they call it? I actually wrote it down because I can't pronounce it. Is and now I can't find it. Anyway, it's just a travesty, I think. I think it's a mistake. I think that it should be carefully considered. Atco is a historic district. I've actually been told by one of the city attorneys it is not. It is. It was, you know, annexed into the city, and it was put on the National Registry in
It is on the
2005.
National Register.
Yes.
The ATCO is on the National Register. It is not a local historic district, but it is on the National Register.
There's places in both your comprehensive plan and also in some other places where people say it is a historic district. Actually, city members and council members. I don't understand that. There's promises to get design guidelines. When I moved there 6 years ago, I was actually horrified to see what the alleyways look like. I'm not opposed completely to developing something, but it goes against the guidelines, the future map, especially with an option. The park that they're proposing would bring even more traffic in. I just think serious road studies need to be done and consideration for the people that live there. So,
I do have a couple questions.
yeah, sure.
You've used the pronoun "we," so you said you've canvassed the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Would you?
And I can provide and bring more people, and I will on the
Fine.
second meeting.
Okay.
I haven't had an abundant amount of time, but yes.
And again, I'm simply asking philosophically, because I know in your time there, you've been very active, and I'm appreciative of the fact that
I've
you've
been
been
a
very
big mouth.
active in trying to improve the entire ATCO area. I think
Sure.
that's something that I think everybody in this council and in this room would agree that
It has
it
improved.
is a gem to be polished. It's your contention that an investment of housing adjacent to where you are is going to be detrimental to the value of your property?
Possibly. One of the things that I am concerned about is, there was brought up that, this could bring the value up in our homes, but it would also increase taxes, most likely. And there are seniors that live there, single, young families that are impoverished. We could do a better job of helping them, and it feels like they're almost going to be pushed out of the community. And that concern has been shown by many. When I say I've talked to neighbors, I have. Some neighbors actually take that stand. Oh, it's going to increase property value. I'm a little afraid of that. So
All right.
I want it to be looked at.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Or
Anybody else have questions for Ms. Crawford at this time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Before anybody else, can I ask a few questions of staff before
You may.
in the middle of the public hearing?
Yeah.
Mr. Sanders, if you would please, sir. You heard in the previous comments that the term of failing streets and street widths and whatnot has your department, I know that you score the streets, we're considering paving. Have there been complaints or anything that you've noted that would be of concern for these streets that are near this development?
Well, it is one of the older subdivisions, and we have resurfaced some of the streets. It's been a while. When I first started with the city, we resurfaced several streets in ATCO, but that's been like 15 years ago. I don't think we've done any resurfacing since that initial batch of streets.
But that is on the same schedule with most other parts of the city. It's
Right,
more or
right.
less, correct?
Right, we've done significant sidewalk work out there with our crews, and we spend a lot of time cleaning up the alleyways. They have a lot of vegetation that tends to grow, and it grows toward the open area, and that restricts access for our garbage trucks. So we just painted the curbs, all the curbs yellow, refreshed all that a few weeks ago. But it is one of the as far as the infrastructure, it's basically unchanged since probably the 30s. There's really been no additional development out there You know, it's pretty much like it was, you know, almost 100 years ago, probably.
And relative to anything referring to water issues,
You know, because most of the time when you have water issues, it's because of additional development that was done without stormwater controls that adds to the runoff. And because that area, that basin, hasn't been, you know, there's been really no additional development in decades, you know, the stormwater system sort of is what it is. There's not any more load on that system now than there was in, you know, 1940. Besides, we do have a little bit more intense rains now than we did, but that infrastructure has been there a long time.
and would this new development tie into that existing infrastructure, or would it be, and if I'm,
You know, we would have to look, that would be something we would get into when we do plan review.
Okay.
And of course, now we have, you know, very strict stormwater regulations that control the outfall of stormwater, so that would be definitely regulated. But I'm not sure which way that additional acreage flows. I don't know if it flows towards the existing subdivision or away from it. We haven't got that far yet.
but to your knowledge, you haven't received any complaints about water issues out there, or have you, or?
From Ms. Crawford,
Okay.
and we, you know, we had people come out and meet with her and talk about her issues. There are some yards out there that are pretty flat, and that, you know, when you do get these intense rains, water doesn't necessarily flow off them as fast as, you know, some people would desire. Where I live in the city, and I have a pretty flat lot too, so I see the same thing. When we have a lot of rain, water sort of stands in my yard until it has time to dissipate.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Sanders at this time? Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I will add one thing about the traffic, just, you know, I think somebody pointed out whether it's, you know, whether it's annexed or not, it still can be developed. And so that traffic, you know, would potentially be there regardless. But the primary way in is Goodyear Avenue, you know, and 80 houses would add about 720 vehicles a day to Goodyear Avenue. So there would be some more traffic, you know, but Goodyear Avenue should be able to handle that. But you know, that's you know, I think that's a valid concern, but it's probably going to happen whether it's in the city or not. You know.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Appreciate it. We'll continue the public hearing for AZ 2201, the zoning portion of that request. Anybody wishing to step forward, speak for or against, may do so at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Porter, Mr. Lovell, members of the council. Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Mike Halloran, and I reside at 164 Sullins Road in Cartersville. And we are here asking for annexation and rezoning of this parcel from A1 to R7, as Randy mentioned, for an 80-house proposed development. Just to answer real quick, part of the question about the drainage with the stormwater. So our preliminary engineering is indicating that that's flowing away from the property towards the railroad and towards the creek. If you'll pull that up there. So on the top left portion of the development, where you see the kind of the big blank space area there. If I can approach.
Yeah, please.
So this area here is the low area of the property. Railroad comes here, so the property is designed to drain towards that, and that's where the detention pond will be situated on the property. So it's going away from Litchfield naturally.
So you would contend from a storm, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, from
Sure.
a stormwater perspective, this may actually improve what people on Litchfield may be experiencing?
I'm not, I wouldn't say
It's not going to have a detrimental
it
effect.
shouldn't have a detrimental effect because it is preliminary engineering showing that it's going to the low point of the property, which is going to go towards the railroad and towards the creek, which would be away from the current ATCO neighborhood. And, our intent is to, we've been born and raised here, 5 generations in Bartow County, well aware of the significance of the ATCO area. And, we're hoping to bring something good to the area. We're certainly not wanting to be a detriment to that area. And we feel like this is a nice neighborhood development to bring for the city residents. We're hoping. Everyone asks me, we're in the real estate business, and they ask me what a starter home is these days, and it's hard to answer that, the way the economy's going and pricing. But we hope that this is in that starter range type neighborhood. Now, if you would have mentioned to me a couple years ago that would be in the mid-250s, it's hard to swallow, but that's about as low as you can get now. But that's what we're hoping to get, so you can have the residents that work, that live in our county can be able to afford a home that's in the city and something nice for the community.
Along the Litchfield side, that part where there will be houses that back up to Litchfield, are there any, we may be way too down the road, or do you have plans for any kind of buffering or trees or?
No, so all of those will back up, so there won't be any driveways coming off of Litchfield, so those will all be backyards that will back up, so that's in essence a buffer of itself because everything's going to be facing the neighborhood streets with no entrances coming off of Litchfield. So those will create natural backyard buffers as you go across Litchfield.
Any questions for Mr. Howard?
And the density bonus question, I just wanted to address that as well because you did bring that up also. And we have spoken with the Parks and Rec Director, Mr. Gilliam, and are meeting with him next week. He seems very excited about the prospect of that donation to add to the existing park. So we feel like that would be a benefit for the city as well to enhance that area. And Mr. Gilliam preliminarily seemed to think the same thing. We'll be meeting with him and some of his staff next week.
Any questions for Mr. Howard?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Menino, I did also want to ask you a question. I asked it in the work session, but I want to make sure I heard correctly. The lot size, all the lot sizes here are in compliance with the R7 zoning district?
That is correct. Now, again, the actual design has not been reviewed because it's not a plan review process. But R7 does allow that density bonus, as Michael had mentioned, which lots will range from 5 to 7,000
And
square feet.
R7's consistent, that's what the ATCO Villages is R7?
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any, and I guess I should have asked this, are there any requirements or limitations on home height? I guess when we're thinking about having it be adjacent to, perhaps blending in with the ATCO Village? Are there any design limitations?
In the R7 zoning district, I believe the maximum residential height is 35 feet.
35 feet to the passport.
Okay, thank you. All right, again, we're in the midst of a public hearing for AZ 2201, the zoning portion of the request. Anybody wishing to step forward and make comment may do so at this time. You can come back up and ask a question if you'd like. Sure.
I guess one of the things I was looking at is that map. The area you pointed out as park, is that the area you also pointed out as having a volcano?
Ma'am, you need to address
Okay,
all comments to the
I'm
council.
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm not good at this.
That's okay.
That's fine.
Here's the city park.
In the
And
woods.
he's talking about this area
Okay.
right here. The pond was down here.
Okay.
I believe yours.
If you go back to that map, it just looked like they pointed at the park and saying there was going to...
The park is over on, yeah, Randy's showing you where that park, where the proposed park would be, and then where the
Right there.
low spot in the subdivision is.
It's turned differently. It's not north, the other one was turned.
Okay. So the retaining pond would be where?
close, on the railroad track side versus the,
On the railroad track side?
yes.
That's
versus the-
also something that I wanted to take a look at and get an answer. According to Steve Taylor's letter, there is a discrepancy. He says that both tracks will be managed by the city and annexed in.
That's at this point, that is I think he's assuming that that second tract along Burnt Hickory Road
Yes,
would be annexed in. That's not part of this application.
okay,
And so the way the way it works in the city, if there's a road, say the city's on one side and the county's on the other side
Yes.
of the road, the county maintains the road. But once both sides of the road are annexed,
yeah,
then it's the city's responsibility. So
To
he was
maintain.
He was referring to that, and that is not applicable to this tract of
Okay.
land. He was referring to the other.
and then why isn't it
that-
annexed into the,
Hold on a second, is that
No,
Councilman Ross?
Just a clarification. So Litchfield right now, as we look at it, that one
you're
side
right.
is in the county, the other side is in the city. What the commission was saying, that once both of those sides are then into the city,
Thank you.
then Litchfield would be totally cities.
But we do currently maintain
But we do, yeah.
Mr. Wilson, he did say we already.
And
To the railroad track.
let me just add something to that. There are numerous areas where the city's on one side and the county's on the other.
Sure.
There are some of those areas that the city road department and the county road department have worked out a mutual sharing agreement where the city, because it's easier for us to maintain that area, we maintain that particular road, and there are others that the county maintains themselves. So it's not an absolute rule. And also, ma'am, I wanted just to clarify that when they were showing you where the detention pond is, understand this is just a concept
sure,
drawing. It is not a engineered drawing, so that detention pond could actually be relocated somewhere after engineers look at it and say, no, it has to go here. Because their engineer and the city engineer will ultimately make that decision where that pond has to be located. Doesn't really matter where it's shown on that.
okay.
And
okay.
y'all are starting to stray a little bit more into the annexation part.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So you may want to
Sorry.
keep the comments to the zoning and then open the annexation hearing after.
Thank you, Mr. Lovell, for that.
Thank
And Councilman Roth, thank you for the clarification. That was my misspoke, and I apologize for that. Anything else relative to the zoning portion of this request? All right, seeing none, I'll close the zoning portion of the request. I'll open up a public hearing to AZ 2201 for the annexation portion of this request. And again, ask anybody wishing to make comment may step forward and do so at this time.
Because
Thank you.
there was another.
And seeing none, I'll close the public hearing for the annexation portion of the request. And remind everybody, we will have another public hearing at our next council meeting, which will be February the
Third.
3rd. Thank you, Julia. And so we'll have another public hearing and on both of the annexation and the zoning portions of this request, and the council will be scheduled to take action on that. Okay? Thank you. We'll move on to SU 2201.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. This is a proposed special use permit on a 4.87 acre tract at 464 Bates Road. The applicant is proposing to build an apartment above his garage. With that, our ordinance requires a special use permit, so you're aware of the apartment going in. With that, Planning Commission held a public hearing and did recommend it to you with an approval recommendation.
Okay? Thank you. Any questions for Randy on this item at this time? Thank you, sir. I'll open up a public hearing for SU 2201 and ask anybody who wishes to speak for or against to step forward at this time. And if you would, sir, your name and your address for our clerk, please.
I'm Robert Berry. I'm at 2985 Vinings Forest Way in Atlanta at this point. headed to 464 Bates Road as soon as we get the rest of this done. We asked for a special use permit for the garage, as you see here, two-car garage, and we wanted to put an apartment on the top to use for friends and family, and maybe down the road when we need help and want to move somebody in to help us. We've been through that with my mother and mother-in-law, and having people under your feet is not near as good as having them in another building. So that's all it is. It's not anything for any commercial use or anything. We happen to be in the city. Everything around is in the county. If we were in the county, we wouldn't even need the special use permit. So we're asking to go from a city apartment size of 650 square feet, and this happens to work out to 870 square feet. So 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a living room, kitchen combination, and 870s, about as small as you can get, to still have a closet big enough to put anything in. So that's
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak on SU 22-01 may step forward at this time. And seeing none, I'll close the public hearing for SU 2201. A reminder, we'll take this up for the second reading on February the...
I got a general question. So,
on this or just on
yes,
something else?
This in a
Okay.
general sense.
All right, well, we can still talk about it.
So, this looks like is the entire property new construction?
Yes, they're building a home with the garage, a separate garage, and above that garage, they're proposing an apartment.
And so you have to have a special use
That is
permit?
correct.
And so if anybody has a garage and they want to put housing above it, they got to get a special use permit?
If it's gonna be an apartment for somebody who's not related to those folks on that property, yes.
What have you done, Jason?
I mean, the way the gentleman described it is there's nobody going in there, but maybe friends and family or...
Typically, if they're attached, you know, looking at building codes, it may or may not require, but if it's detached, it's always required. And, you know,
It's a
some of the
separate structure.
Some of the neighborhoods, some of the covenants disallow apartments on the single-family residence. Again, we went back a few years ago and made it the special use where it was not allowed at all at one point, so.
So, I want clarity. I'm putting a two-car garage in my backyard, right?
Yeah.
But nobody heard that just now. And right now, I don't have it set up to put living quarters above it, but let's say I did. I gotta get a special use permit for that?
Yes.
Even though I'm just gonna go live out there when I'm fed up?
If it's your man cave, if you're gonna have somebody else living out there, that there's a chance you require a special use permit. We'd have to evaluate the request.
Because when I first read this, I was like, oh my goodness, he's gonna be renting out in a home or whatever, but the way I heard it was, hey man, it's just an oversized garage with a space for people that can take care of me one day. Okay, well, that's it. No more general questions. I
That's
just,
why I would recommend
General.
for
He's building a garage and you know what that
First
is.
session of council visioning tomorrow, we're gonna go inspect Jace's construction.
don't worry, JB hadn't started yet.
Yeah. It starts at 8 o'clock at Jason's house.
All right, we did close the public hearing portion. Is there any other discussion relative to SU 22-01? Thank you, council. We'll take this up for final consideration, our first meeting in February. And we'll move on to T 22-01. Mr. Menino again.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. This is a proposed text amendment to the zoning ordinance. At the last couple of visioning sessions, Council has mentioned residential in the DBD. Right now, strictly residential, just residential without a commercial component to it is not allowed in that zoning district. What the proposed text amendment does, it's twofold. It puts a planned residential project allowance in the actual zoning district standards, and it requires a special use permit. The special use permit portion of it, because it's in the DBD, requires renderings of the project, exterior elevations, a breakdown of the square footages and density of the project, and requires to provide us a parking plan that we can evaluate to make sure that the proposed residential with the density they're proposing will work where they're proposing it. Again, the current ordinance doesn't allow for strictly just residential. It has to be above, below, or behind. This will allow it as part of a project. If somebody's just doing a residential building, that allowance will be allowed in our ordinance now. But again, it will still have the scrutiny where you would have the opportunity to evaluate it. And secondly, it would also have to go to historic preservation if it entails new building or change to an existing structure.
Okay. Any questions for Randy on this?
Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Thank you. I don't have public.
Yes.
Can I ask one question?
Please
Sure.
It's
do.
a zoning tax.
Will, I know this is residential, this is a residential, talking about residential projects. Do we have anything, do you still have to have a special use permit if like we had a hotel come downtown? Would that fall under this, or would you have to do something?
If hotels are an allowed use in there offhand, yeah, I'd have to look through the allowed use list to see if a hotel is allowed.
Okay. I didn't know if this would cover that or not.
It would not, this ordinance would not be applicable.
Yeah, this is strictly
to
for residential
a
living.
hotel.
Okay.
This would be applicable to single-family resident type structures.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open up a public hearing for T22-01, and anybody wishes to make comment for or against may do so at this time. And seeing none, I'll close the public hearing for T22-01. And again, we'll take this up for consideration at our first meeting in February. Guess what, Randy? You got another one.
Last one.
That's right.
This is a proposed invoice from the county for conducting our elections from the November municipal election. It is a budgeted item, and the total for the actual election cost was $15,679.31.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Sanders, you are up.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We opened bids on residential garbage carts, and the low bidder was from Ray Rig Pacific Company for $37,367.69. Something I didn't mention in work session, this company does have a plant in Lawrenceville, so these carts will be made pretty close by, and we recommend approval of the low bid.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Forsythe, you're up.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and Council. This first item is regarding a previously approved return activated sludge check valve, two check valve repairs. You approved in August the repair by Go Forth Williamson Incorporated for a not to exceed price of $25,000. And upon issuing the notice to proceed with the project, the contractor reneged on his price. So we rebid the project, received one bid from Go Forth Williamson and Son, or Incorporated, for a price of $61,475. You'll notice the quantities, the labor amounts, nothing changed except for the price of those items. And I'm requesting that you rescind the previous approval and approve Go Forth Williamson Incorporated for the price of $61,475 for this repair.
Are they a sole source? Well, no, I guess it's a repair, so it's not. It's just finding people to do it, having the means to do it.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, so Chair will entertain a motion to rescind the previous award.
Motion to rescind the previous award and approve the go forth
I
Williams.
have to have them in two separate, so I just need those.
Motion to rescind. the
Thank you. Do I have a second on the motion to rescind?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Continue on, Mr. Fox.
Motion to approve the go forth Williamson Inc. updated bid of $61,475.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next one, please, Sidney.
Yes, sir. This is the replacement of a heat pump at the water treatment plant, 7.5 ton unit. It's about 12 years old. Over the last year, it's been giving quite a few problems. We've made numerous repairs. The latest estimate is $2,700, and the vendor will not guarantee that that will fix the problem. This is a 24-hour occupied space, so it runs a lot. We requested quotes for that. The low bidder was T&T Commercial Services for $13,000, and they do have that unit in stock presently. We're requesting you approve that.
Thank you. Any discussion? If there's none, a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Last one for you, please, Sidney.
Yes, sir. This is an invoice from the Atlanta Regional Commission. This was from a memorandum of understanding between the city, county, and the Atlanta Regional Commission, which basically gives us access to common counsel for regional water providers. And this, in layman's terms, lets us negotiate in the water wars. This is what has allowed us to gain reallocation of water in Lake Allatoona. This invoice is split evenly between the city and the county, and the city's portion is $50,000 for this year. Request your approval.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Freddie, while you're making your way up, the chair's going to entertain a motion to add 2 items to the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
2 items added. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a request to surplus some items that departments have deemed actually age or condition that we should surplus those items. We're requesting the council to approve that tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? If not, a motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir. Mr. Porter, why don't you start with the grant resolution?
Yes,
That
Mayor.
added item, that first one.
A few meetings back, you approved an application process for a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program grant application for our police department. We've been accepted or awarded a bid for award of $21,500 for 1 year for our police department personnel. So I recommend approval of this resolution to accept those grant funds.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? If not, a motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. You doing the next one, or
Yes.
Mr. Lovell? Okay.
I'll handle. We had a settlement with one of our employees that worked for a part of our department. Basically had an issue with the workers' comp injury, and through our workers' comp carrier negotiated a $50,000 settlement. Recommend approval of that settlement and with this individual.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We will conclude with the finance report. Good evening, Mr. Reinhardt.
Honorable Mayor and Council, we will be looking at the November 2021 and comparing to November 2020. The general fund revenues increased over last November by $1.45 million. Expenditures also increased by, $1.26 million. 2 areas of revenue I would monitor on a monthly basis are the local option sales tax, have an increase there of about $495,000. Building permits and inspection fees have a decrease there of about $7,000. The water and sewer fund revenues increased over last year by $1.53 million. Expenses decreased by $4.32 million. This is due to decreased personnel expenses, decreased operating expenses, decreased debt service expenses, decreased capital expenses, and increased transfers to the general fund. In the gas fund, revenues increased over last year by $3.76 million. Expenses increased by $3.1 million. This is due to increased personnel expenses, increased operating expenses, increased cost of purchased gas, increased debt service expenses, and decreased capital expenses.
The electric fund revenues increased over last year by $707,000. Expenses increased by $1.92 million. This is due to decreased personnel expenses, increased operating expenses, increased cost of purchasing electricity, increased capital expenses, and increased transfers to the general fund. In the stormwater fund, revenues increased over last November by $8,000. Expenses decreased by $110,000. This is due to decreased personnel expenses, decreased operating expenses, and decreased capital expenses. In the solid waste fund, revenues increased over last November by $330,000, while the expenses decreased $36,000. I'm sorry, they increased $36,000. This is due to decreased personnel expenses and increased operating expenses. Finally, in the fiber optics fund, revenues increased over last November by $72,000. Expenses increased by $344,000. This is due to increased personnel expenses and increased operating expenses. Our cash position for the month of November, excuse me, the total unrestricted funds increased while the total restricted funds decreased. The SPOS account balances, SPOS 2003 account, current balance is $30,226.66. SPOS 2014, $231,991.10. And SPOS 2020 account, $4,672,888.69.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Yes, sir. As I shared with the mayor and council, obviously you've seen the natural gas prices basically almost double since last year this time. Electricity, we have a combustion turbine as part of electricity. Also as part of the electric costs, the Plant Vogtle nuclear construction costs, we are starting to see those debt payments in there. That's why you're seeing expenditures increase in the electric fund. General fund, as Tom pointed out, last year we had the CARES Act money in there, but even with CARES Act money, the general fund through November is at 2.3, almost 2.4 million to the good, compared to 2.2 last year with the CARES Act money in there. So we are trending very well. Sales tax dollars are coming in fairly well. So I thank Tom and his staff to keep up with these numbers in all the departments. As you saw earlier this evening, our costs are going up even with garbage carts or in the water department. So we are trying to maintain those costs as effectively as we can.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the financial report? Thank you, sir. Is there any other business that needs to come before council this evening? If there is none, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Stay going.